Why panhead? Why woman? Why ride? Why hang out with chicks? It's the same thing. It's just, it's good.
I don't do anybody wrong. I don't push myself on people. I don't try and be anything more than who I am. And that makes a huge difference to the people that it matters. And the people that it matters to, those are my friends. Spade George, MCMF, Redwood City. I didn't even know there was a Harley Davidson. I had no idea what kind of bike that was. So I ended up getting a Ducati 125. And I bounced around on that for maybe 6 or 7 months. And then when I saw that movie, that's when I started looking at a hacksaw a little differently, if you understand what I'm saying. And then I started actually chopping the Ducati. But in the interim, while I was introduced to Harley, I started to build one. And what ended up happening was, the more I'm building it, the more people I run into that have Harleys, because that's where I had to get the parts from. And it just turned into a lifestyle for me. At the time I got into it, I didn't know anybody that worked on bikes. And I never had any money in the first place, but I had the concept. So what I ended up doing was just coming out of the air with these concepts, and they actually matched up to everything that I seen around, because without seeing them. So I was right on track, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even realize what I was doing. It was just happening at its own pace. And then the more I started, getting exposed to different types of bikes at the shows and everything, I started incorporating those ideas into it. And the choppers, to me, is a type of independent thinking. Is that when you start getting into the actual riding of the bike, the real riding, you start changing things, because you notice that the way you sit on the bike, the posture makes a difference, the arm length makes a difference. Can't just look at the bike and say, oh, I like that style, because you have somebody build you a bike and you get on it and you can't ride it because the handlebars are too high or something. Even though you step back and you look at it and you go, wow, that's what I wanted, but that's not what you, after you ride it, that's not what you feel. So I set up my bikes for lane splitting. When it starts getting into really narrow traffic and it starts to slow down, that's where my bike works the best. Running on 60 miles an hour, I travel at about 80 miles an hour. I could split lanes and soak in the guy on a bagger. But when it starts slowing down, you know what I'm talking about.
People that claim there was apprenticeships back then, this and that, I'm kind of leery, because I know people that start tattooing. When I came up, there was no apprenticeships. Either you bought the equipment from somebody and you started on your friends. You didn't go and nobody went and you made needles, nobody went and you mixed ink. That was part of learning. That's how you learned the tattoo, so you did it on your own. You bought the padded ink from a supply company. You bought either the needle bar stock, you had the jig and you made your own needle bars. You bought the loose needles by the 1,000. And this was what gets me. Everybody's complaining about Chinese needles. The history of tattoo and the needles came from India, China, or England. They've been using Chinese needles for 100 years in the trade. Nothing new. No story here. Keep going.
My good friend Spade George moved to San Francisco in 1969. Didn't know anybody out there. Just one day he said, I'm going to California. Him, his girlfriend, and his 1950 Panhead left.
I didn't go to California. I went to San Francisco. It just happened to be in California. And once you live in San Francisco, you realize that San Francisco is San Francisco. It's not California, it's San Francisco. Haight Street was nothing like it is now. There isn't even a remnant of Haight Street. I mean, it was really cool. I can't explain it any better than that. It was something out of a dream. no matter where you went in the city, and people were open. Because when me and Ann showed up, we didn't have a place to live. And then we hooked up with some communes that was down on, was on Page Street, the Page Street Commune. And they let us stay. And the reason was because everybody was going back and forth from New York to San Francisco. So what they were doing was they was actually established in both places. The Lower East Side, because I ran into people out here that I knew personally. And so they gave us the inn, you know, they introduced us to the Page Street Commune. So for about maybe 5 or 6 months, we had a place to stay. And then we were homeless. Then we were actually sleeping in abandoned buildings because at that time, it's not like it is now. There was a lot of abandoned buildings in San Francisco. And some of them even had electricity. And the stoves worked. I mean, it was really, but at the time it was something you take for granted. You didn't think about it. Because we were doing the same thing on the Lower East Side. And now everything is so different that you don't see that anymore. You don't see you know, we used to stay in a building and it would have electricity, it would have gas. The heat, because the way the heaters were, I don't think we had heat. I think they were still cold. But it didn't matter. We had a roof over our heads, you know. And it was the same thing in San Francisco. Because it's cold in San Francisco, just not as cold.
Tommie Granger is a bad motherfucker. Back then you had to worry about drunk driving. It didn't matter. Nobody gave a shit, you know? So I call him up. I said, Dave, there's this new bar opened up in Long Branch called Casey Jones. You know, you want to go? He said, yeah, let's go. I said, I'll pick you up. So I go pick him up. And we stop at the Laugh in this bar in Long Branch. We're drinking in there. Yeah, we're getting fucked up, you know? We're pretty blasted, you know? So we leave there, and the door didn't shut good. The driver door had like a bad bear claw on it. So we're going down through West End, taking a right on 2nd Avenue. We take the right, and the door, and when I went to downshift, the door flies open, and I fall out of the truck.
Well,
and I'm driving, you know, yeah, I'm driving. So now, Dave is like putting an 8-track in the glove box. We had an 8-track player in the glove box. He's changing the 8-track, and he looks over, and the truck's going towards a parked car, and I'm not even there. I'm out of the car. I'm gone. The door's open. You know, I'm driving. So it had big, wide, like 60s tires on the back. It was all jacked up, you know, the way everybody did back then. And I had real long hair, really like down to here, no lie, you know. And that fucking tire, man, I hit the ground, the tire went over my hair. That's how it was close. It was like crushing my skull, you know.
I did a little stretch of time. It wasn't much, but when I came out, Hate Street was kind of going on, and you know, people were burning out. They were doing a lot of drugs, and it eventually will get to your head. You know, it'll take you down. So what happened was I started getting to know the people of San Francisco. And there was a lot of them. Independent writers, a lot of them. They were all over the city. And they had their little separate cliques. They weren't clubs, but there was friends that grew up, went to the same high school. You know, and then you started realizing that, oh, there's a whole nother side of San Francisco. And the Mission District on the Upper Mission was better than anything. It was like being back in New York. Okay. It was the same thing. But that only lasted for maybe 15 years. It lasted between, let's say, 76 and about 88, 89, it started to change. But you could go down Mission Street and there was about 5, 6 different bars. There was a connection. There was the L&N Saloon. There was George's Club. There was Beau's Club. And a bunch of just neighborhood bars. And what it was is these weren't biker bars. But you wouldn't know that because you'd see 10 or 15 bikes parked out in front. It was like being in a beehive. And what would happen is these people were they were into their bikes. Definitely. It was a glorious time because I would leave my shop and I'd go down Mission Street in the middle of the day to get parts, right? And wouldn't get back because I'd see a bike over here and I'd stop to talk to him. And I may have a drink. And then I would never get to go anywhere because I'd end up staying there and then more people would show up. And then by about maybe 7 or 8 o'clock at night, you'd be at this bar with about 8 or 9 bikes. And this is during the week. Now you say, okay, I got to get out of here. So I have to pass other bikes, other bars. But there'd be bikes out there. So I'd stop to say hello. Or they'd be out there, hey, what's up, man? And the next thing you know, I don't get until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, and people used to rip around. And it wasn't a club thing. It was something that was basically like the New York scene. It really was, that was the best time. It was better than Haight Street.
I got into motorcycles because my dad rode motorcycles. The first time I rode on the back of a motorcycle, I was about 5 years old, and it was on his BSA on the cobblestone streets of Portugal. And I always rode on the back of his bike. When I was 17, I bought a bike and I never looked back.
What did you buy?
I bought a Sportster, 1980 Sportster for $1,800. Right. I soon hit the harder stuff.
Gateway drug?
That was it, man. Sportsters are gateway drugs. Or a gateway bike. Right. Uh-huh.
You wouldn't believe half of the stuff that went on Mission Street. You wouldn't. It's something that when you really talk about it, you know, like for instance, the DUI thing wasn't as prominent then. So what would ended up happening was people would leave the bar literally drunk, and they'd go flying up the street. So the cops would always be hanging around just to make sure, you know. And at that time, you could get a pass. They go because they knew each other. See, everybody grew up. These are neighborhood people. These aren't people like from, you know, the hippie crowd down on Haight Street. You know, these are the people that indigenous to San Francisco. And you don't see what you see now is the people with the bikes, with the new bikes, and they just don't ride them the same. Some do, but most of the time you don't see it. You just don't see it. You know, you'll get there. I tell them, now don't follow me if you're not ready to ride. But I'll tell you where I'm going. They show up there, but not as fast. You know. Harley is making models now that we were thinking about 40 years ago, taking bikes and, you know, blacking them out and doing things to them. But Harley only had that one model. Now they got a bunch of different models. And they're great concepts. But now you see one, you see them all. Here we go again. If I had I wouldn't buy a stock bike because all I do is take a hacksaw to it, cut it up, and make it into something different. If I bought a stock bike, I wouldn't buy it brand new. Because why pay that much money for a bike that you're going to take all apart anyway?
What do you have now? What kind of bikes do you have now?
Well, I have a lot of bikes, but I only really have one. And that's my Panhead, just right behind me. I have a 39 Knucklehead that I built for a horse chopper show. I have my 58 Shovel, my Panhead, Street Glide, which I kind of rip around the country on, and you know, another bike I'm trying to build a flathead out of.
Pete, go back to LA.